Genesis chapter 22, starting at verse 1, concluding at verse 19. From the New International Version of our scriptures, you will find these words. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham, here am I," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains I will tell you about." Early the next morning, Abraham got up and saddled the donkey. He took with him two of his servants and took his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Abraham, "Father?" "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said, "but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. When they realized the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on the top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy." He said, "Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." To this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time and said, "I swear by myself, declares the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies, and through your offspring all nations on earth will be blessed because you have obeyed me." Then Abraham returned to his servant, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and the hearing of his word. For the brief time that is mine, I want to tag the text with this thought: a rightful place for a father. A rightful place for a father. I was in a conversation the other day, and it hit me that this is the first Father's Day that I wasn't around any of my children. My daughters text me this morning, "Happy Father's Day. Daddy, I love you." And I text them back, "I love you too." Last night, my son texted me, and he said, "Daddy, can I have the clear fruit that's in the refrigerator?" No Happy Father's Day. He just wanted to drink my water. But it was a little surreal to me to wake up this morning and not have my children there. Over, say about 30 years ago, the doctor told me I would never have children. And even though you're 16, 17, you're not even thinking about having children at the moment. But there's still a ton of bricks that falls on your head when the doctor is telling you at an early age that you'll never have children. So in 2002, on January the 1st, at 6:30 in the morning, my son came. When we were leaving the hospital to go home, the nurses said, "We'll see you here in a year." And I said, "For what?" They said, "You'll be back." I said, "Well, it better be for a 1-year appointment because this is it." And surely enough, February the 1st, 2003, here came my daughter. And then I said, "Okay, God, I got a rich man's family now. I got a boy and a girl. That's it." 4 years later, April 9th, 2007, here comes my daughter. One thing I want to just kind of drop in your spirit is never say never. And just because the doctor gives you one report does not mean that is the end of the report. So here we have Abraham. And Abraham is now walking with the son of the promise. Abraham does not send his son to church with his wife while he sat home and watched the Olympic Games on Egyptian television. Abraham does not send his family off to worship the Lord while he stays home and chills because the week was long. Abraham is found in our story today with his son about to go worship God. Abraham is going up to the mountain, and he has his servants with him. And he tells his servants, "You stay here while me and the boy go worship over there." Can you imagine Isaac holding his daddy's hand, and they're walking up the mountain together? And Isaac looks up at his dad and says, "Daddy, I see the knife. I see what you built, but where's the sacrifice?" Abraham looks down at his son, tears in his eyes, grips his son's hand just a little bit tighter, says, "God will provide." Now, God had already given Abraham this promise that if you leave your country, your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and as numerous as the grains in the sand on the beach. But now here God is asking him to sacrifice his only son. Now, just to drop this in here, this was not Abraham's only son. This was the son that had the promise over him. So now Abraham is now looking down at a promise and still believes that God will provide. The first thing I want to drop into the spirit of our fathers is that you must be ready to live for God. Abraham was told to get out of his country and go to a place that he did not know where he was going, but he simply did it because God told him to. He was told to sacrifice the son of this promise, and he did it because God told him to. He did not have to ask his friends, "Are you sure this is what God wants me to do?" He did not have to update his status on Facebook or Instagram asking people, "Are you sure this is what God wants me to do?" He did not have to ask his wife, "Are you sure this is what God wants me to do?" He knew that that was what God wanted him to do. And guess what? He did it without question. How many times do we do what God wants us to do without question? It feels like every time God wants us to do, we begin to go into the recesses of our mind and begin to ask God, why? Why do you want me to leave? Why do you want me to stay? Why do you want me to give my last dime? Why do you want me to kill my only son of the promise? Why do you want me to do all of these things? We begin to ask God the question, why? Every time God wants us to do something. So my question becomes, do we really have the faith in God that we say that we have? Do we have the faith in God knowing that God is still going to provide? Do we have faith in God knowing that even if God does not provide the B clause of where he wants us to go, that he is going to make sure that we get from point A to point B with no questions asked? Do we trust God enough to go even if we don't know where we're going to go? Abraham looks down at his son, says, God will provide. Abraham now lays his son on the altar. And as he lays his son on the altar, can you imagine him binding his son up? And his son is looking up at him. I can remember when my son was about 5. My son had an ear infection. And when I walked into the room, my son was laying with his head on the bed. And this long needle with a hook on it. The doctor pulls the needle out of the bag. Now I'm 6'3", 200 and some odd pounds. And I got scared to death of this needle. And my son looked up at me. And I looked down at my son. And my son reached out his hand. And my son said, Daddy, help. Tears running down my face. And I looked at my son and said, I can't help you right now. But I'm right here until they do what they need to do. Now, I could imagine what I was feeling, or I know what I was feeling. When my son had tears in his eyes, my son was going through pain, and there's nothing that I could do about it. But imagine what Abraham was going through, where he's looking down at his son, the one that God promised that through him was going to be many nations, and now God is asking him to kill this boy. Abraham is looking down at Isaac. Isaac is looking up at Abraham. Can you see the interaction between a father and his son? Can you see the interaction between a son and his father? The thoughts that are running through Abraham's mind must be going a mile a minute, but in the midst of all that is going on in his mind, the words keep running through his mind saying, the Lord will provide. So as he is lifting up this knife, the tears, I can imagine, are running down his cheeks. Isaac does not try to fight it. Isaac knows that he is younger than his father. So why did Isaac not try to get up and run? He could have overtaken his father at any moment, but he laid there because he trusted in his father. And because Isaac trusted in his father, Abraham trusted in his father. And as the knife was going down, the tears are running down his face, the angel of the Lord screams from heaven, "Don't do it!" God sees your faith. Simply put, Abraham, the angel is saying, Abraham, God knows how far you are willing to go to listen to the words of the Lord. Fathers in the building and fathers online, how far will you go to listen to the words of the Lord? Are you willing to leave a job that you've been at for 20 years? Are you willing to move halfway across the country, not knowing what you're going to meet when you get there? Are you willing to follow the words of the Lord?